Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains, episode number 741. And you know what this is? It's the pre-show, that magical, marvelous time where we do three things. If you've never watched this before, we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. Yes, indeed. So we're going to get the gang on here once we get the embed code in the right place. And be a little different tonight. As you know, the world has changed a lot here in the last few weeks. And most broadcasting companies have decided to move some of their talent, and in my case, I use that word very loosely, away from the TV studio, and they put us at home. And so I am in Studio A tonight. The one thing about tonight, we're going to have a hard out. I mean, most weeks, the show can just keep on going. I go in there and do the late news, no problem. But the problem is the late news tonight is generated in this room with this equipment. So we're going to be finished by 9:50 Central Time tonight, which is technically when the show should be ending anyway. You know, most weeks we just blab and just keep going, and, you know, it is what it is. But for the next few weeks, while I'm here, we're going to have to end it on time. So I guess that can be good or that can be bad. Got a lot to talk about tonight. Got the Jonesboro tornado and all these things that have happened. And I think Ryan Vaughn from Jonesboro Paragould is going to join us from KAIT Television at the beginning of the show here tonight. But let's get all set up here and get the other gang members on the show. And we'll get this sucker going here. One thing about being here, I actually have better bandwidth here than I do at work. I've got the connection we use at the TV station is Charter, and I think the top up down is about 150 megs. We're here, it's about 900 megs up and down. So that bandwidth will not be a problem tonight. We might have other problems, but not that. So let me start to invite the gang here. And I think they're all there. So now we have the invitation done. And let me be sure I got all the settings right. It gets a little complicated here with doing this stuff, because I actually switched the weather segment now. While I'm here, I'm doing the actual controlling of the weather. When we go to the graphics on television, we kind of use the double box thing. You know, I could stand up here and do it. That's not that hard. The problem, it's the clicker. And what I would have to do is put a wireless keyboard on the floor and step on the space bar with my foot. And, you know, I'm not really a super big person, but I weigh about 190. I could crush a good keyboard. So I think in this case, I'm just going to, do this and do the double box format. But who knows? We might experiment some more. Every day I do something different. I rigged up a camera out in the backyard today. So instead of the sky cam, we had the span cam in the backyard. Used just a phone pointed out back, which works fine. What's scary, I'm getting pretty good at doing this at the house. This is not a bad thing here. I mean, I after the show's over, you just walk downstairs and you're home.
I know. I've been working from home for 5 years, James. You can't beat it.
Let me tell you, there's a lot of advantage here. I mean,
tremendous.
I could get used to this. You know, but I do miss my colleagues, but we talk, you know, virtually.
They miss you too, I'm sure. Right, I've invited.
They tried to put one of the news anchors at home tonight, and you can't. That's going to be really hard to do because to deliver the video and audio back to the station, they use this technology called Live View, and typically people are on cellular networks when they're using Live View, and there's a 2-second delay. And that latency just doesn't work well when you've got two news anchors doing a newscast. It's okay for a live reporter or for a weather guy, but when you're kind of bouncing back and forth, that latency is a problem.
Dr. Waxler, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Well, we hear you fine.
Just wiping off the whiteboard they gave me to teach from.
This may be the biggest
by the way,
on the show in a long time, James.
About 87,000 people have told me that I've mistyped the number. I've got on YouTube 471. I will fix that later. This is not 471. This is 7 fat fingers. Yeah, we're doing a time machine here, but I will fix that later.
Yeah, well, the little dyslexia never hurt anyone. Of course, the Apple.
Oh yeah.
Help.
Well, I've got the new one. You know, I've got the new one, which is the old keyboard.
Is it? I have
the one I'm used to.
Bad keyboard, and I need to take it and get it changed.
No, this is the new one here. Nice thing about it here,
there we go. Jay,
I can do a weather deal here.
Yes.
I can be like a television weatherman.
All that's with Wirecast?
This is what it looks like on television. I do the double boxes. I do everything. I mean, all the directors got to do is hit that live view source, and I do the rest. Because with the latency, I need control, and so I've got the Baron box routed through. I use Wirecast, and you know, it works very well. At least for now, it works. Technology is great when it works.
Well, we're gonna see what the capacity of Zoom is tonight, because we've got a bunch of folks on.
Boy, you know, we were using Zoom before Zoom is cool. Now the world knows about Zoom. I did a workout today. The gym where I typically go, they're using Zoom, so everybody's using Zoom.
Yeah, all the school systems here are on Zoom as well. We were doing the YouTube Hangouts for a while, and we had some bandwidth issues there. Then they did away with it altogether. We flipped to Zoom and no issues.
Yeah, our whole university is working with Zoom. Absolutely no issues. It works very well.
Yeah.
Do any of y'all remember the PBS program Zoom from the 70s when we were kids?
I do.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Now that the Hangout thing was just never worked well for us. There would be some weeks it would take 30 minutes to get the guests on. And
it was job security and a heart attack for me every single week all rolled into one.
With this, we're just ready to go at 26 after the hour. I mean, we're 4 minutes early. So
hey, Aubrey.
Hi.
Aubrey, are you working at? No, you're still working at the station.
You know, I have to say I'm very blessed. So far, things have not changed. I think, what do we have? We've got 3 people in the news department, pretty much. For the 5 and 6 o'clock shows, that number goes up to 4.
Okay. Well,
yeah, no, we've got Rob Fowler, Bill Walsh, and these guys here. They're just doing everything from home.
Saw Nate Johnson tweeted out a picture of all his people, the NBC meteorologists all over the country. They're all doing the weather at home. So we're all just laying back. And let me just say, I do have pants on tonight. I'll prove it. Are you ready?
Did you read that? Did you read that?
Are you ready?
The stores are selling more tops than pants because everybody needs tops to wear on their teleconferences.
Yeah. So I'm going to stand up to prove it. Are you ready? Do you think this might be a bad idea?
Did you double check?
Yeah, it scared me there for a minute since you had on beige, James.
Yeah, no, these are cheap suspenders and you know, these khaki pants. This is not the standard TV look, but hey, it works.
Sounds like a
on
ZZ
TV
Top song.
Yeah. And again, you know, I could do a stand-up thing, but I just don't want to. I guarantee you, I will ruin one of these, you know, wireless keyboards, and these things are not cheap. And I just see disaster all over that. So we're not going to be doing this forever. So
You hope.
I'll just stay here and do my thing here, which works fine. I guess you guys saw this breaking news here.
What I didn't do. Oh Lord.
Oh God.
So you don't get news like this in just any show. You get it on this show.
I noticed you showed that before we went on television.
I might change my mind.
No,
Yeah,
no,
it's not too late
that's
to
right.
run, Dr. Waxler. You're way
You
too
might
smart
wanna-
to be on the show.
You might want to run. No, this is a thing. This is a big thing in Michigan. It's a big deal.
That's not a
it's
typo?
No, this is Deerfield, Michigan. It's a big event with thousands of people that come every year. So
I have to say,
It
when I
is-
was in some town in Colorado, Silverton or Durango or somewhere, I thought I would be all brave and eat. What are they called?
Prairie
Mountain-
oysters.
Rocky Mountain oysters.
I did it just to make you throw up on the show that following Monday night, James.
Yeah.
But I have to say, that was pretty bad.
You know, we went to a Colorado Rockies game, and they sell those things at the game. And I went by and thought about it for maybe 2 seconds and just walked on. So, no,
I have to concur with your decision.
not happening.
Right, let's
So
have
we
Ryan
got
Vaughn
to
join us
wait.
He
We got to
should-
wait until 30 after to wait for when the television
Troy.
hits us, and then we'll get the show started here. Got Troy here.
Hey.
And,
I'm gonna. What I'll
Uh,
do, Dr. Waxler, is I'll introduce Shay, and then let's see. Then I'll introduce Ryan Vaughn, and then I'll come back and introduce you, and then we'll talk to Ryan for a minute about the Jonesboro tornado. And
I don't see Ryan yet.
yeah, I just sent the invite.
And let me just welcome our television audience. Welcome. It's Monday night. It's 30 minutes after the hour. And you know what this is? It's WeatherBrains. And I know there's some rain moving in on radar, but we'll be out of here by 10 o'clock. And by the way, we do have a hard out tonight because now I am in Studio A. You know, every Monday night, every Monday night I say, well, you guys keep on going. I got to go, you know, do the newscast. Well, guess what? This is where the newscast happens. So we will be out of here on time tonight.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, James.
We're going to
Took,
start
it
the
took a
orders.
serious deadly pandemic to get the
Well,
show.
no,
under
we
90
we
minutes.
finished up at
No.
1:30 a.m. last week, so that's why.
Yeah, right. That thing went on. I'm still listening to the audio version. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3. Well, hang on.
You're upside down, right?
Uh-oh.
There you go, Ron.
Does that work? Is that more good now?
That's
That's
perfect.
better.
Yeah. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 741. This is, well, you know what this is. This is the weekly show that's all about weather. And we thank you for taking time to join us this week. I promise we have a very, very interesting show because there is so much to talk about. But boy, we are in a weird time in our country. Are we not, Troy Kimmel?
Yeah, and I mean to ask me that about why do you ask me about weird times in our country?
Well,
No, it
you're
is.
the
I
first
agree.
one that popped up here.
Well, you know, I got you, and you know what? I think that may be an understatement, James.
Yeah, the two of us, we've been through weird times.
We
We're
have.
old, and we've been through weird times. So
James, you remember that time back in 1900?
yeah, I remember that. You know what? I just missed the polio thing. I just missed that. But I was involved in the Cuban Missile Crisis, which
There
is
you go.
a very odd thing. But yeah,
I
we're
heard
in
you were
odd
involved
times.
in that. Yeah.
And you know, so many people are working at home now. The only person I see that's not working at home is Aubrey, who is still in the Studio A at WHSV.
Still in studio, one of like 4 people here. So
Oh, really?
Well,
It's quiet.
Yeah, I bet you it is. In fact, I went into the station Saturday night and did an all-night severe weather thing, and
Yep.
It was just empty. In fact, the only people in there were people disinfecting the building, a cleaning
So
crew.
James, with your
And I'm hearing
background,
crickets.
with your background, you look like Max Headroom.
See, let me just say, I can actually do the weather here if we want to. I mean, this is how I'm doing the weather on television. I mean, I got the Baron Link system plugged into this thing, and I'm switching the whole thing here. So it is just, I'm having to learn to switch and talk and look in the camera all at the same time with just using my hands without looking. But it's an acquired skill. But it has been very interesting. But I see we got some big Nate just popped. I thought I heard Nate's voice. Mm-hmm. So you tweeted that picture of all your people working at home. How many meteorologists are working at home with NBC?
We have more than 80, and we've got about 95 total. So we're pushing about 90% of our people.
Wow. Yeah, we live in different times. But Bill, let's bring in our guest. And I see Ryan. I want to get Ryan on here. I want to give Ryan an attaboy. But Bill, you bring him in and go.
Yeah, we want to get Ryan in and out here. But first, I want to remind everyone, this is the final week of National Weather Podcast Month. The 5 families of the weather podcasting mafia get together every March to raise awareness about all the great weather podcasts that give insight and discussion about meteorology and the atmospheric sciences in a fresh and creative way. Our show, Weather Hype, the Carolina Weather Group, of which Shay Gibson's with us tonight. B Squared and the Stormfront Freaks all do this, 52 weeks a year, some of them 26 times a year. But, it's just a great place to go and share your love and passion for weather. But tonight we welcome Shay Gibson from the Carolina Weather Group. Shay, what's happening over at y'all's podcast?
Hey, Bill, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on. Yeah, we're wrapping up our month. We've gone to one show every couple of weeks now instead of every single week. But we've just hit our 300 mark not too long ago. And so we're continuing on. We have a whole line of guests. We got Dr. Phil Klotzbach coming in next month for a couple of different shows with us. And, we've got some interesting guests. Doug Marcy from NOAA will be coming to talk about sea level rise. And we're just excited about this year's lineup that we're putting together and anxiously awaiting the hurricane season.
It's not far away, unfortunately. We're a little worried about the Gulf being as warm as it is, that's for sure. And it could be a rough year with all the factors coming together. But thank you for being with us tonight. You know the rules. Shay, you're a panelist. You're one of us. So come with lots of questions. So please get engaged. But on Saturday, we were transfixed as we watched footage from an Arkansas DOT cam as a tornado tore through Jonesboro, Arkansas. Tonight, we welcome friend of the show, 2016 NWA Broadcaster of the Year, Ryan Vaughn, the chief med at KAIT in Jonesboro. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here, Bill. Good to be here.
And glad we got you turned right side up there. We want to talk to you. I want to introduce our guest, WeatherBrain, Ryan. So hold that thought for just a second.
Okay.
But tonight, we've got senior research scientist with the NCPA and a research associate professor of physics and astronomy at the University of Mississippi. He's been at Ole Miss since 2000. His bachelor's in mathematics from the University of Chicago. His master's and PhD are from Columbia in physics. Dr. Roger Waxler, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I'm glad we'll get you out. We'll get you out tonight at 9:30, or if you want to stick around till 10, we'd love to have you all the way. But first, tell us real quick what the NCPA is, because I'm not sure what that is.
So that's an acoustics laboratory at the University of Mississippi. It's called the National Center for Physical Acoustics. And what's unique about it is that it's an acoustics laboratory with a sort of a physics background. Not all, but most of the people working there are physicists. We also have engineers in the lab. And we do a variety of research. There's ultrasound, medical applications. We have a group that does aeroacoustics for airplanes and other flying objects. We have a group that measures properties of the upper layer of the soil, and our group does infrasound.
Well, you're doing some really cool stuff and came to our attention because you're detecting tornadoes with those acoustical signatures. So we're really excited to have you on the show tonight. Thank you for joining us. Are you into football or food or both? Or neither?
I'm into food.
Okay.
I've learned to dislike football since I moved here.
Well, we won't ask you any questions.
Show
about
title.
And we also
Hail
want to
State.
all your time at the University of Chicago, because you had a relationship with someone that we know and respect very well. But thank you for being here. We're going to talk to Ryan for just a second, though. Dr. Waxford, feel free to jump in and talk about this tornado on Saturday in any way. Ryan, take us through the setup and the scenario. What happened Saturday?
Well, I think all of us were thinking that the severe weather threat would be greatest in northern Illinois. I think we were all on the same page on that. We do things a little different. Our outlooks, they usually fall in line kind of with the SPC, but we decided years ago to go low, medium, high, and extreme. We thought it communicated better with viewers. So for us, we had a low risk.
Wait, so slight isn't a good word to use for
No.
effective outlook?
No, it's not. Is that another can of worms?
That's a show in itself right there.
Haven't we done that show 3 or 4 times?
That's a whole year
That show
worth of
20
show.
times. Yeah.
So we had a low risk that morning. Me and Zach and Brian talked, and we nudged the medium risk down a little bit into our northern counties, but we weren't blaring all of the sirens and horns at that point. We do our 7-day forecast where if we think there'll be watches and warnings, we put red on it. We don't first alert it or anything like that. We just put red on it, say we're anticipating watches and warnings. And so we were expecting severe weather. I don't think we expected an EF3 to plow through the middle of the city, but that afternoon we had our first tornado warning. Our game plan, because it was Saturday, it's Zach's shows. I'm not going to come in there and push him out of the way. He had his shows, and we were under a low risk, and I was on standby at home because we're kind of doing the social distancing thing anyway. So I've been doing a lot of my work here, coming into the studio 5 minutes till and doing weather. But so a tornado warning came in, and I came in mic'd up, and Zach and I went on air. Immediately, I just drew a line. We all do this. You draw a line and you say, oh crap, this has the potential. This storm is going to come into Jonesboro, and it has the potential to hold together. And so a little after 4 o'clock, I think it was 4:13 or so, we had already started mentioning, hey, Jonesboro, this could be here before 5 o'clock. And so folks were already paying attention a little bit. And then it put down a tornado in Jackson County, a pretty decent tornado also. And it was tornado warned. Everything was rocking and rolling. The warning process was great. We, at that point, were switching from Little Rock National Weather Service to Memphis National Weather Service. They picked up the warning in Poinsett County. And I think where the breakdown came a little bit between viewers and I guess the Weather Enterprise altogether is the Weather Service went with a severe thunderstorm warning at first for Jonesboro. And people are beating up the Weather Service a little bit, and I've been going back and looking at that, and I kind of want to take up for them, because we stayed with it, but it's not out of the question. Our coverage typically isn't, tornado warning's over, back to regular programming. This storm had already produced a tornado in Jackson County. It was showing pretty good signs of cycling. I fortunately also had some other meteorologists that I'm friends with kind of messaging back and forth with me also. And it was just showing signs that it may not be done doing what it's doing. So we stayed with it. And people are beating up the Weather Service a little bit on that. And I've tried to stay out of that completely because they went with the severe thunderstorm warning and we stayed with it.
And let's clarify, you're in the Memphis CWA, right?
Yes, at that point, Memphis was taking them on. And this could be an entire show by itself. They went with a severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible. We had talked in the chat already, and I had kind of said, let's do something, anything that'll ding a phone. Anything. If you go severe, let's go severe tornado possible. Let's just get the phones going. And they went severe, but they did end up going tornado warning before the tornado went down. So there's some miscommunication going around. And, they're like, oh, you guys saved lives and the Weather Service wasn't going with it. And I'm like, not completely. Yeah. So I do want to take up for them on that. Yes, they went severe thunderstorm warning, tornado possible. but they did go tornado warning before it touched down in the city. So
How many minutes, Ryan?
let's say, I believe they issued, let me look at, they issued the warning, I think at probably 11 minutes, I think, beforehand. 11 minutes. So
that's about the standard lead time for a tornado warning.
It is.
And
So,
Ryan, Troy here, because this is just ironic. I was sitting there watching that storm, and I watched us approach Jonesboro. How soon was that tornado warning issued before I watched your guys live go to that tower cam when we first saw it?
I think it was 11 minutes. When it came
11
down,
minutes
it was
from
11
there.
minutes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I have to go back and make exactly sure of that, but I believe the warning was issued at 4:47, and I believe the tornado went down at 58. So
And we saw that live on Region 8. I mean, we
so
saw
wild.
that, right? I'm sitting there watching it on the iPad.
And this is why those cameras are so critical. That was stunning.
Yeah.
James,
Incredible
you taught me
coverage.
that years
Incredible.
ago. You taught me that years ago, and I love cameras. We have 9 cameras now, and they cover a large part of our area. We're very flat, so we can get pretty good vantage points. And I commend Zach and our team, Zach and Aaron and Zach. I loved what he said. He said, "We're not going back to radar. If we're going to look at this tornado, we're going to see it." And it was a wild thing to see unfold while I'm sitting here at home watching, this unfold also while covering it.
How hard was this on you working it from home? We're all working from home now. Tell me about the dynamics of that deal.
Okay, so I've never worked from home during a wall-to-wall severe weather situation. I just broadcast from home my first time on Thursday night. So I learned some things that I needed. When Jonesboro started taking hits, my power started going out. When you're at the television station, you have up systems and you have no breakdown of access to your computer. So I'm controlling Max. We had already decided that Zach and Aaron would have Max 1 and I would have Max 2. And so I was on Max 2 and everything was rocking and rolling. Well, I don't have an up system. So when they started taking power hits, even though it was 18 miles south of me, we are both fed by Southwest Power Authority or something. So it was messing up everything. So I had that problem. And then I was using cable, just like everyone else, to watch our own coverage as I guess you'd say, your confidence monitor. And that started going out. And so now we're getting an up system here in my home office really soon. And I'm putting an antenna up also, just to kind of have 2 ways to get the signal.
There's some best practices for you, James. You got all those covered. Got to take some good notes.
Yeah, no, I'm a UPS guy. I got them all over the place, and my monitor is off the air. And thank goodness I bought like a $5 antenna, and it works. But there's still some latency. But I know that it's not satellite, it's not cable, it's not YouTube TV or whatever. So, but I just want to congratulate you because you did a remarkable job of communicating critical information in a timely fashion, in a calm fashion, with really good information, and you and your associates knew exactly the geography. You understood the situation. People need to study that to see how to do it right. Yep. So I just wanted to congratulate you because we all watched it and it was really good. You don't know when you're on the air. You have no idea because you're in the middle of it. But let me just tell you, Ryan, it was really, really good.
It was.
Well, I appreciate that, James. Something you asked about being at home. I had my dog sits right over here. I had one kid in a snow cone trailer about a mile down the road that I was trying to get back. And my wife trying to get them down the basement. My wife comes in. If you'll hear me snapping in it, I'm snapping, and I'm trying to not just go, "Hey, family," I'm snapping. And she comes in, and I point at the monitor, and there's this just huge tornado. I mean, coming right up Highway 49. If you look at a map, it was heading toward our house at the time, and I pointed at that, and her eyes got real big. And so, usually when you're at work, your family's taken care of. They know to go to the basement and everything. But I felt like, well, I'm here. I better start barking out orders on where the dog goes and where the kids go and get this kid here. So it got a little wild.
So James, have you ever been in that situation where you stayed wall to wall when the Weather Service went to severe thunderstorm warning instead of a tornado warning? Have you ever had that gut feeling?
Yeah, we of course we do that a lot. If there's a storm that's tornado warned and it's coming right for a larger city, and you just have even if even if there's no tornado, you got a nasty severe thunderstorm, there could be some wind damage and large hail. I do that a fair amount if it's coming through one of the bigger population centers. So yeah, but that was a great call to do that. And and I do want to ask you, Ryan, it sounds like you hopped in your car and headed to Jonesboro, because I could see you had a dash cam going. Is that always in your car?
Well, what it is I was running live view on my phone, and I never dropped that. So I kept the live view. I picked up my laptop, which, I've got my laptop right in front of me here. I picked that up, and my boy that came from the snow cone place hops in the car with me and is my helper. And I just stuck it on my magnet mount and just turned it sideways and went. And what I was trying to do is I went east and I tried to come in on the backside of the storm while I'm seeing debris falling, insulation's falling and this. And I said, okay, we're in rain. We have insulation falling. This isn't safe. And so I immediately audibled and said, okay, well, I'm going to go south and go see this storm, because here's the deal. It's like you, James, you go up to a roadblock or something, chances of me getting in and seeing what happened versus maybe one of our reporters that hasn't been here that long, doesn't know these cops and things like that. I knew I could get down there, see what happened, pass that information along. And really, I just kind of wanted to help. And so I went down to Jonesboro and got down to pretty much the ground zero within minutes, and just immediately thought we would have fatalities.
And we should point out at this point, Ryan, that you've done some first responder training. So it's not like you just know these folks from, hanging out at the donut shop, but you've worked alongside them.
No, it is the donut shop first. Yeah, that's something. I'm on the Greene County Rescue Squad here also. So our rescue squad also, if you hear in the coverage at one point, I'm radioing back to them. So really, I'm kind of running three things. I'm trying to inform them. I'm trying to, help with the family a little bit and make sure everything's in line there, which my wife had everything under control anyways. But yeah, I'm on the Greene County Rescue Squad. So Greene County, a lot of folks, the sheriff's department, once we found out everything was pretty much okay in Greene County, we're heading south to help with the response out of Jonesboro.
Now, Ryan, how high was that debris signature? Was it truly 20,000 feet for some of that?
It definitely was 15, if not 20. There's some indications of it 20,000. I've got pieces of Kirkland's in my backyard, and that's 18 and a half miles south of me.
That was amazing. The debris signature in the CC was amazing, Ryan. I've never seen. I mean, that covered such a wide area. It was very impressive.
We have debris all over the place. We have pieces of the mall. I mean, going 2 counties north of here. It's just, and we haven't even touched on the fact that the reason there were no fatalities wasn't exactly our coverage. It was everybody is social distancing.
CV.
It went through a part of town, guys, that on a normal Saturday night at 5 o'clock, thousands of people would have been there. You're talking Cheddar's, Academy, the mall, right beside Chick-fil-A. I mean, just places that would be packed typically.
I haven't gone and looked through the LSR yet, but how long was the track of this one?
12 miles, I believe, is what they came down to, 600 yards wide. I believe was the numbers. You get after you come out of a situation like this, and almost the people that aren't in the situation know more about the LSR than I do, because you're still just out there talking to people and stuff, and then you'll get friends, from meteorologists in Nashville. Well, I heard it was 12 miles. Oh, okay. Well, I didn't even know that. So we're just still kind of caught up in the cleanup and recovery right now.
And how long did the news department stay on the air covering? How long was the coverage for the aftermath, Ryan?
6.5 hours.
Woo!
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. We started tornado coverage at 4:10, and we were done with that, I believe, 11 something.
Wow.
On a Saturday with probably a skeleton staff too, and people were
skeleton
working
staff,
from home.
Everybody's social distancing. But I tell you what, that whole Corona social distancing just got thrown out the door. In fact, the governor came the next day and kind of warned everybody. He's like, "Hey guys, I saw you last night. Everybody's, passing microphones around, and the mayor and I are this close together, and the police chief, and we just kind of forgot about all of it." And then yesterday we all kind of regrouped, and no more than 10 people went to one location to do cleanup. So even if it was a large building, they had groups of 10, so that everybody's still trying to keep their distance a little bit.
Ryan, have you had a chance? I know you've been busy, but have you had a chance to see the METARs from Jonesboro Airport?
I did briefly. I believe we had a 64 knot wind, and then I think power got it first.
Yeah, and what I've been talking to some folks in the Weather Service to try to get a feel for this, because I'm real interested. I know you've walked that area, but the amazing backing of the wind beginning at about 4:53. I'm looking at the obs now. Winds went from 170, and as the tornado approached within a minute or so, they were out of basically 100 degrees. So it backed that much. And then the obs came back, which is a little amazing because the pressure dropped. And I don't mean the pressure dropped. It dropped before the obs came out the top of the hour, but the pressure sensor went out after that. And we have no pressure after 2200Z. And then after 5 o'clock, we get the obs. They continue for an hour and a half before the ASOS dials down. Got a question for you, because we're kind of wanting to know this, and some folks actually in the Weather Service are watching this tonight. Is that flight service station that's on the north side, is that flight service station building that's on the north side of the airport, that's still not occupied by flight service, right?
It is not.
Okay.
No, they're no longer there.
What we think, and what I've been told, is the ASOS rack and pressure sensors and modem and battery backup is in that building. And it almost like the pressure sensor may have failed in that rack. It could have become uncalibrated because of the pressure drop. But then the obs continued for at least a while longer. The ASOS sensor array in the middle part of the field appears to have survived, but I'm just wondering about that building, that old flight service building. We know that's where the communication side of ASOS is, and I'm kind of wondering if that building survived.
That makes me wonder. No, it took on damage.
Okay.
It did take on some pretty good damage.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Well,
I
here's
didn't
what,
think about it.
In the 5-minute obs at 21:55, which is 4:55 p.m., the altimeter was 2966. Again, that's at 4:55. At 5 o'clock, down to 2960. That's 600ths of an inch drop in less than 5 minutes. And then the pressure reading at 5 o'clock is the last one we had. The obs continued until 6:30 that evening before the ASOS essentially wound down. It looked like the battery in the rack, what was in that building, finally the battery went out. Yeah.
Wow, that is interesting.
But it's really some good stuff there. I actually wrote up a PDF on this today just to look at it. And it's really pretty amazing. Really good observational stuff with this tornado, it looks like.
So Ryan, do you have to do a show at 10, or are you?
I do. I'm gonna drive back to the studio in about 30 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes.
You're welcome to stick around. We've got a really interesting guest along with us tonight. You're welcome to stay as long as you can.
I'll stick around for a little bit.
Ryan actually prepares for his 10 o'clock newscast, as opposed to some stooges that just walk in there and do it. So that's a professional there.
Well, Dr. Waxer, you didn't have any questions for Ryan, did you? Before we
No, I just got to say this is fascinating to me, because I never get the opportunity to interact with the people who actually put their feet on the ground.
Well, if you might have some questions for us tonight, but the work you're doing is amazing, giving us perhaps another tool that we'll be able to use in our arsenal in the tornado warning process. Talk about your research for a minute.
Yeah, that's our hope. So. You want some background first on how we got to this?
Sure do. We want all the background you'll give us. We do have a hard out tonight, which usually I don't have to say that, but we'll cram as much.
We've got an hour. 30 minutes. We got an hour to go. Yeah.
Oh, I don't have an hour to talk. So my research group, I run the Infrasound group, and Infrasound is acoustic signals at frequencies below our limits of hearing. typically it's defined to be below 20 hertz or 30 hertz. But that's relative to what humans can hear, and that depends on your age. For us, it's just the real low frequency stuff. And the motivation for a lot of the work in this field over the past 20 some odd years has come from verification of the Nuclear Weapon Test Ban Treaty. So infrasound is one of the 4 technologies used. It's used because we can't use satellite data. Satellite data is held close by the countries that have it. And if you want an international treaty, you have to use data that is openly available. So infrasound is one of the 4 technologies: infrasound, seismic, hydroacoustics, and what's called radionuclide, which is capturing samples of the atmosphere and looking for radiation. And the infrasound field, compared to, say, seismology, even though it's in some sense acoustics is ancient, it's fairly new. There were no real infrasound microphones when this started in the mid 90s. And one of the things that happened in my lab was a push. So there were microphones that were sensors, we call them, that were developed and started being deployed, but they were developed by a geophysics community. And the director of our lab, Hank Bass, was a hardcore acoustics type, really wanted a microphone. And so he started an effort in our lab to develop infrasound microphones. It really started with Doug Shields, who passed away, and was picked up while Doug was still alive by Carrick Talmadge, who's my colleague and really is together with Daniel Kleinert, who retired. And Dan is from a community that's dying out. He's an expert at analog circuit board design.
Wow.
High school degree. He went to the Air Force and learned everything on his own. And I've enjoyed telling PhD physicists from Lawrence Livermore Labs, no, it's not Dr. Kleiner, but we'll see if he'll let you use his circuit designs.
Sounds like Tim Samaras.
It does.
Yeah.
So Carrick worked hard, and they designed these microphones. I should say that when I first got to the lab, I'd have my window open because they over air conditioned for me. And I would hear these strange noises, woo, woo. And after a while, I looked out the window. It was Doug Shields yelling at his microphones to test them. But Carrick and Dan spent some years developing these, and they're now the state-of-the-art infrasound microphone. They've just been adopted by the U.S. For use in the U.S. stations for the test ban treaty verification work. They're high quality, high fidelity scientific instruments, but also designed to be left out in difficult environments indefinitely. And they're a wonderful thing. I was a tourist for this development, and now we have them. So at some point we got to build several hundred of them. And our expertise is really capturing signals from very large explosions from far away. So that's the expertise we developed, and we had these sensors. Meanwhile, there's also been a history in the field of seeing what you could do, what you could pick up. You can pick up the aurora borealis, for example, that is a shock wave, produces a signal. There's a large group working on trying to augment seismic monitoring of volcanoes with infrasound monitoring to see if there is additional information and warnings you can develop. There was also a long effort to use infrasound signals to detect and track tornadoes. It began with Al Bedard, who, you smile, you know the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's out in Colorado, Boulder. I forgot, he worked for NOAA, but which was it? NCAR was he at? Al's a character. He's a man in our field. And he decided that he was detecting tornadoes from hundreds of kilometers away. He insisted that any signal coming from the direction of a storm between 1 and 10 hertz had to be a tornado. and nobody believed him. Okay, he had fixed arrays, just a couple of them. He didn't really have ground truth in the sense of a tornado track. He was too far away to really get a good localization of what he was detecting, but he was detecting the direction of storms, and he was adamant that this is what he was seeing, and no one believed him. At the same time, there was a theory for infrasound signal generation from tornadoes by a guy named Abdullah from the early 60s, which stated that tornadoes were vortices, would oscillate, and those oscillations would radiate sound. And then it was shown in sometime in the first decade of this century by David Schechter, was shown to be mathematically false. It just is not correct. So we were all pretty skeptical about it. And what happened was Hank Bass passed away, and he had funding specifically to study violent weather. Tornadoes, we were using it for tornadoes and hurricanes. Some other groups were actually using it for volcano studies. And so we had this funding to study signals from tornadoes, and we had the funding, so we went out and we did the work. We sent small company we work with, Hyperion. They're the ones we've actually licensed the microphone technology to. They made some improvements, and they now sell them. For this type of thing, they sell like hotcakes, but it's a small market. A couple of guys at Hyperion enjoy tornado chasing. So rather than letting my guys go out and get near tornadoes, we were happy to subcontract to them. And they went out, and the plan was, they went out to Oklahoma. And the plan was, rather than chase tornadoes, to back away from them, putting out an array of sensors while you were doing so. And that turned out not to be a great idea, because it's a difficult environment and you're scared, and it's hard to put out a well-formed array if you're running away from a tornado. But we managed to get good data from, Stillwater tornado. It was an F5, I believe, and then another F4. And Garth Frazier is the guy in our group who's our master of array signal analysis. Actually, he comes from an Air Force radar community. He looked at the data, and sure enough, we picked up signals from the tornadoes close enough so that we can compare to the Weather Service's tracks, and our bearings tracked them perfectly. And they were exactly what Al Bedard was saying he was seeing. So we were convinced Al's right, and there's something here.
And that was May of 2011, Dr. Waxler, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Were you inspired by the April tornadoes in the South at all, or were you in the process of getting everything together at that point to make that trip?
No, at that point, tornadoes were sort of a sideline. We're a soft money lab. We work for contracts, and so we had other work we had to do, the test ban treaty work in particular, and another project that came up, which has been finished. It's actually become operational for the Air Force. It's a forensics project where they can put out enough hardware in a U.S. city. God forbid there should be a nuclear blast. They can capture enough information to determine what the nature of the device was. And so we had a small part in that project. That took up a lot of our time. So the tornadoes was something that we honestly, we'd really like to work on violent weather. Appeals to us. No one wants a nuclear blast, but they don't happen too often. And we think we can do more good for people if we can address issues of violent weather, tornadoes and hurricanes in particular. So here in Mississippi, when the tornado sirens come, we just duck, right? And that's the way we were treating them. So we went out to Oklahoma because we knew that's where the best ground was for tornadoes, finding tornadoes and so on. We got the data, we wrote the paper. We also found there was a higher frequency. The signal that we tracked from distance was the one that Al Bedard was looking at. It's between 1 and 10 hertz, well below what humans can hear. And we were able to track out to about 80 kilometers, actually.
And so with the array, can you get the azimuth and the range? The direction and the distance, or do you just have one of those?
To get
Okay.
range, you need more than one array, and you need to triangulate. Okay, that's the way to do it. With a single array, we're able to get a direction, and that's what that bearing is what we compare it to the ground truth, the ground truth.
This is only where it connects with the ground is where you start picking up the signal, correct?
That's not clear. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, and that's part of the interesting part. Now, there's a second frequency band we picked up when the tornadoes came closer. It's the low frequency audible band. It's probably responsible for what people say they hear, the tuk, tuk, tuk. And we had a guy, Joe Park, working for us at the time, who looked at videos of tornadoes and the data, and he hypothesized that that was coming from the turbulence that happens when the tornado hits the ground and stirs stuff up. And so we developed models for what the signal from turbulence should be, and nails it. That's clearly what that higher frequency portion is. The infrasound, however, we still don't know what's causing the source. We have recently looked, so we spent some years trying to generate funding for this because we can't do work without funding. And some funding showed up a few years ago from NOAA. So it was to augment the Vortex Southeast project. We put out 10 arrays in northern Alabama and picked up a lot of tornadoes, a lot of tracks picked up. We found we could detect an F0 even crossing in from Mississippi into Alabama from arrays that were sort of in the Huntsville area. So that's about 80 kilometers. We've recently found that at least in one case, we pick up the infrasonic signal before the weather services find a track. And then when the track hits, we pick up the second signal, the higher frequency signal. So we might be seeing signals from the funnel even when it's not on the ground, but we don't know. We need more data. And we need an understanding of what's causing the signal. So we currently have a couple of contracts with NOAA. One of them is specifically about the source physics. We're working with Paul Markowski at Penn State, who's doing fluid dynamics tornado modeling. And we're working with a guy named Stephen Miller. He's a fluid dynamicist at University of Florida. And between the two of them, we're studying the fluid dynamics of a tornado itself. And we're hoping that we can determine what the actual physics of the source is, and maybe our signals can tell us something about the tornado itself. However, what we can do without question in our minds, we can detect and track from distance. We have many examples of this. We're slowly knocking out potential false alarms. We have yet to find signals that would confuse us. We're in the process of looking at data from storms that did not produce tornadoes, just to see if there's anything there that might be a false positive. So far, we haven't seen any.
Well, that is just fascinating and amazing what you're doing. Are there any factors in the atmosphere or other things that cause problems for your signals in terms of receiving them, interpreting them, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, there are two aspects. The first is signal propagation is really controlled by the direction of the winds aloft. So in particular, the jet stream and wind jets that are lower than that. So what happens is the signal gets refracted off the ground and then gets refracted back to the ground when it hits a wind shear in the direction of propagation. So given that the winds are generally in the northeasterly direction, we have a cone of detection northeast from the tornado. So we pick up tornadoes to the south-southwest of the arrays. So that's one thing. There's a limited area that you can pick up the signal from. And so if you're going to build a network out of these, you have to have a network with enough arrays to compensate for that detection criteria. The second is that the signal has to be picked up through whatever noise is at the array. And the dominant noise is what we call wind noise. It's pressure fluctuations associated with the turbulence in the atmosphere at the location of the sensor array. Right? These are microphones, they just pick up pressure changes And if there's any turbulent motion in the air, there's pressure associated with that, and that corrupts the signal. That's the big bugaboo in infrasound detection. We have techniques for reducing the wind noise, but that's an issue at some stations.
So
let me ask you this: what does terrain have to do with this? Is that a problem? Because in our state, we've got some hills that are 2,400 feet. Does that interfere with this?
So acoustic signals are not line of sight. They do go over hills to some extent. There will be an acoustic shadow, but to some extent they go over hills. One of the questions in our mind is what altitude in the tornado is this signal coming from? If it's coming from a couple hundred meters up, the terrain in Alabama is not going to play a significant role. But we currently, one of the contracts we have with NOAA is specifically to study the influence of terrain on the signal propagation. And we brought in a researcher from Lawrence Livermore, Ki-Hoon Kim, who actually has a finite difference code that can put all the physics you need in it. My hope is that we can run the code and find out what complexity is necessary. A code like that takes weeks to run. So we would like to be able to pull back to the faster, less comprehensive codes that we use, but this is currently under investigation.
So
I mean, if this
by a code,
go ahead.
sorry, Shay, what do you mean by a code there?
Computer program.
A computer program. Gotcha. Go ahead, Shay.
I was just going to ask, we're talking about microscale here, and I'm wondering if an array would do better placed ahead of maybe where a tropical cyclone would make landfall to gauge it on a wider scale, even when seeing some of the embedded vortices within that, just to gauge it for a larger event. Is that something that's been thought of?
You mean to look for tornadoes that are spawned by a cyclone?
Well, just maybe even the signal itself from a strong hurricane landfall, from what gauging from the atmosphere, what level in the atmosphere, and then any embedded tornadic activity that would be occurring closer to the eye wall.
So there are two things I'll say about that. We do have a project to monitor tornado intensity remotely, and I'd love to talk about that. You don't want your sensors to be in the middle of, hurricane intensity. I said tornado. We have a project to monitor hurricane intensity remotely. We believe we might be able to determine the winds at the eye wall from signal refraction. I'd love to talk about that in a little bit. But you don't want your sensors to be in the middle of a hurricane because the wind will create such local pressure fluctuations, it'll swamp your signal. The advantage of infrasound is that it travels long distances without attenuating. So the signals we're detecting from hurricanes, for example, we pick them up inland, up to 100 kilometers inland from hurricanes in the Atlantic. Okay, and so we're at large standoff distance, and I believe that has to be taken, that has to be used. But if we've had arrays at landfall for several hurricanes, Hurricane Sandy in particular, and the arrays survived, but they stopped recording.
I'm sure it became pretty muddled, even for maybe Hurricane Michael, for instance, just catching it from a distance to see if you could pick up anything from there.
But what we're picking up from hurricanes is different. I'm glad to talk about that later if you like.
Okay.
So do you have any real-time arrays right now that are set up trying to gather data, that could be used in real time, Dr. Waxman?
Yeah, we have a bunch of research arrays that are sitting in Alabama that we're currently not allowed to go tend because of,
Oh, Lord, yeah.
That's okay. They can collect data for 6 months before they run out of space. We haven't had the funding to implement telemetry back to home. We'd love to do that, but we just have not got the money. We know how to do it. Hyperion actually has in the meantime developed great systems that can telemetry the data back to home through several vehicles, satellites. We would use cell phone technology. We don't have that set up yet. Garth is an expert at real-time processing. So he assures me that the processing can be done almost instantaneously. He has a lot of experience with this for other applications. But currently we're in a research mode, and we're trying to convince the weather services.
Yeah, has that been a challenge? I know you said you've worked with NOAA, but has the Weather Service been excited about this?
Only recently. So it's only since the past two American Meteorological Society meetings that we've gotten respect. Prior to that, people would come up to us and say, "What are you doing?" We have radar. And we said, okay.
So Dr. Waxler, what's the end game? Where do you see this in 10, 15 years? When does it go operational? It sounds like this could really enhance the radar network in the warning process.
So if we had solid funding, I'm pretty confident within 4 to 5 years, there will be operational systems deployed.
And I think of
Nate,
cities
right
like
at
Charlotte, I was just going to say, I think of cities like Charlotte that don't have a widespread coverage of radar where we could supplement data in some of these gaps.
Yeah, we actually pick up the tornadoes real time. Well, the signal takes 3 seconds per kilometer to travel. Sound is slow compared to light. And so if your tornado is 20 kilometers away, what is that, a minute? So you're a minute away from a warning. But we're not depending on eyewitnesses. We've picked up tornadoes that the weather services didn't report on until the next day, when they sent in people to look at damage from potential tornadoes. We actually detected and tracked them in principle in real time. It's just we haven't got the operational system together yet. But
and
again,
you say you don't have a problem with false alarms.
So far, we do not. The meteorology community is jumping on us about that. We can differentiate thunder easily. It looks different, and it occurs in pops instead of the continuous signal that tornadoes have, and it's stationary. We can cities radiate infrasound. So Huntsville and Decatur, Alabama radiate, but they don't move. First of all, the signal looks different. They're also stationary, so they don't fool us. We're in the process of looking at storms that did not spawn tornadoes. We've looked at one. Garth downloaded data from a storm that went by that did a lot of wind damage, but didn't spawn any tornadoes, and he saw no signals. Now we work with Kevin Knupp at University of Alabama, Huntsville. We got excited about this and asked him what kind of storm this was, and he said very unusual. Apparently it was a strange storm. So, we have terabytes of data. We're going to sift through it. I can tell you that when there are tornadoes, we do not pick up signals from anything else. So I'm confident that there will not be overwhelming false alarms.
So Dr. Waxler, are y'all, I'm sorry, James, go ahead. I'll ask my question after.
I was going to, are you looking to go into this as a private business and profit from this, or are you looking to sell this, or what's the involvement for your group in 15 years?
I have no idea. Right now, we're just looking to do our work and excited that we might be able to save lives, quite frankly. I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, and again, I think it's great. A lot of old people like me, they hate new ideas. I love new ideas. I think it's fascinating. So
you remember we used to turn our televisions to channel 2, James, and turn the darkness all the way up, and when it would light up, that was supposed to end.
Oh yeah, back in the good old analog television days. who remembers analog television? Wow, those were the days.
Well, I heard you were quite a rock star at AMS, Dr. Waxler. Are you planning on taking your show to the National Weather Association? We got a pretty big dog on here that's kind of involved with that. He's the second guy with the blue shirt there.
He's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
I think
not until next year.
Well, that's all right.
Well, we'd be delighted to. We really don't know the community. The more exposure we get, the more of you people we meet. Speaking to the people who actually go out there and try to generate warnings is critical to us. We're used to doing that with our defense work. In the meteorological work, we've only been interacting with scientists, and it's a different attitude. We've sort of, even though my background is is pure science. I come from really mathematical physics community where people who were proud of producing things that had no use. That's changed dramatically. And honestly, our goal, we were excited that we might be able to save lives. So interacting with the people whose job it is to do so, to learn from them, to tell us what we need, and to hopefully tell them what we can do, we would welcome that with open arms.
Well, put on your calendar, Dr. Waxler, Monday night, September 16th, and God willing, the creek don't rise and the virus goes back into the cave somewhere. Greg Stumpf, Nate, the research and operations nexus that he does at NWA on that Monday night would be a fantastic place to get you with operational meteorologists who are looking for these opportunities to marry research and operations.
That would be great. Yeah.
So I'll
the line of communication has gotten a lot better in recent years between research and practitioners. For a long, long time, and I'm old as dirt, there was no communication at all. I mean, we didn't talk, we didn't know each other, but thanks to functions like this at the NWA and some of these conferences, times have gotten a lot better, and we need to bridge that gap. And you need to understand our needs, and we need to understand what the end game is. And again, I love stuff like this, so I think it's fascinating. I mean, and you say this thing, if you had funding, could be up and running in 5 years.
Yeah, no question about it.
Nate, write the check, buddy.
I mean, we're gonna pound the pavement around here. A friend of mine got in touch with me the other night, and there was tornadoes were passing through, and she texted me and said, "Do you have a system in Oxford? And can I get a direct feed?" And I realized we don't. That's ridiculous. We don't have a system set up in our backyard. So I'm going to see if we can pound the pavement and generate some interest to put out 3 arrays around here focused at the university and the city of Oxford, Mississippi, and see if we can get an operational system going just on the side.
So I think at some point you ought to smoke the peace pipe and head down the road to Starkville, which might be a sin. But there's an amazing meteorology program down there, just down the road. And I'm just saying, if we could team some of those folks up with what you're doing, good things might happen.
I will hit you up for contacts. I will hit you up.
Okay.
I'm not from around here, so I don't have that baggage. But believe me, I've been in places Sweden doing experiments, and someone from the Corps of Engineers came up and said, "Oh, Miss, what are you doing here? We're Mississippi State."
Hail State. Hotty toddy, hotty toddy.
No, I'd love contact with them. So please, I'm going to ask you for contacts.
Well, I'm going to send you Greg Stumpf's information, and as long as all this, goes along, and it looks like it's on track for September. Nate, you can comment on that if you know something I don't know. But I think that would be an outstanding place for you to be able to be in Tulsa this year, and it's going to be outstanding. So. Who remembers that? What was it called? You probably remember, Troy, the Ole Miss Mississippi State football game where the wind knocked down the winning field goal, and Ole Miss has pointed to the fact that God must be an Ole Miss fan. Because it was like a chip shot, 26-yard field goal. I mean, literally on the video, you watch it goes up and it comes literally straight back down because there was this, tremendous wind blowing off the ground.
I remember that, but I just don't remember when it was. I do remember hearing about that.
The Egg Bowl has some of the most bizarre endings in football history. This thing that happened last year, I still to this day can't believe that happened.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the most bizarre ending.
But that's a whole different thing, though. I mean, it's one thing to have the weather controller. There's something else to embarrass yourself as happened.
Well, it's going to get even more interesting this year. Yep. I can promise you that.
Speaking of things we hope happen this fall.
Yeah, exactly. No question about it. So talk about a fellow that you know at the University of Chicago. That's
I don't know him.
Pretty famous to all of us.
Professor Fujita was a character. He was a flamboyant man, apparently. He would teach a freshman class in maybe meteorology. I didn't take the class, but he was famous for suddenly getting a call and just running, getting in his airplane and flying into tornadoes, apparently. And students talk about it. So I remember hearing about him long before I had any idea I would be studying even acoustics.
Well, James, I guess we can let Dr. Waxler get out of here. Won't you wrap us up and take us to the report?
Yeah, because we've got to get out on time, Dr. Waxler. But thank you. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, are you on social media? What email? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you without giving out your home number?
Yeah, so NCPA at olemiss.edu. So if you Google NCPA, those emails will get to me.
Okay, awesome. Well, Dr. Waxler, thank you so much for your time. This was a fascinating discussion, and
thanks for having me.
Keep it up. Keep it up. We appreciate it. Have a great
Thank you,
night.
sir.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. You too.
All right, we're going to take a break here. Tony Rice is going to come on with his weekly astronomy report. We're going to come back with the email inbox, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter are putting on a show this week in the pre-dawn sky. Tomorrow morning, March 31st, Mars and Saturn will be less than a degree apart. Look again throughout the week and you'll get a sense for how close Mars is compared to Jupiter and Saturn. Those two gas giants barely move against the background of stars, while Mars moves noticeably to the left day to day. By April 9th, the trio will line up appearing equally separated by about 5 degrees. Elsewhere in the sky, you may have heard about a newly discovered comet. It's getting brighter and brighter. C2019Y4 was discovered back in December by the ominous-sounding Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS. It has generated some excitement when it suddenly got a lot brighter in mid-March. Astronomers are also pretty excited because this comet is currently high in the sky, often more than 50 degrees above the horizon, allowing them to monitor it more closely. This has also led to the hope that it will continue to brighten to the point where it's visible to the naked eye. About that, astronomer and noted comet expert David Levy put it best. Comets are like cats. They have tails, and they do precisely what they want. To put this in meteorological terms, any predictions of what C2019Y4 might look like in the future are about as reliable as the 240-hour GFS calling for snow. Sure, it could happen, but there's a lot of other scenarios that can play out between now and then. It's simply too early to call, but worth keeping an eye on. The other thing to consider is where the comet will be in the sky should it become naked eye visible. Sure, right now it's very high in the sky, with about an 8th magnitude brightness, which requires a pretty good sized telescope to see. It would need to be closer to a 2nd magnitude, which currently estimates put sometime into mid or late May. By then, it will be very low on the horizon and much more difficult to make out, especially in suburban skies. We can hope, though. This same scenario tends to play out with many promising comets. They don't get bright until they're low on the horizon and shortly after sunset, making them pretty difficult to see. But if you think about what makes comets get brighter, and think about this in 3 dimensions, it makes a little more sense. The tail extending behind and the comet that surrounds it enlarge as energy from the sun excites the frozen comet, causing it to eject gas and dust. Plus, comet tails get bigger and brighter as they're closer to the sun, and more sunlight reflects off those dust and ice particles. C2019Y4 is coming in from above the plane of the solar system. As it gets closer to the sun, the closer it is in our sky to the setting sun, near the horizon. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me in RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
Well, this is the point in the show where we normally have our friends from Trade Weather, AJ Grossblatt, over with us tonight, but he disappeared, Troy. I guess we made him mad.
Maybe it was something Tony Rice said.
Tony's a
Could
pretty
be.
controversial fella.
Yeah, you know Tony. I
But
mean,
we are really excited. And now there's AJ. AJ, do you have to boot out and boot back in there? Or he's being a victim of too much bandwidth in his neighborhood wherever he is.
Many people watching
Too many
Hulu and
broadcasters
Netflix.
soaking up the bandwidth.
That's all these weather people doing the weather at home.
Yeah, that's right. That 30 minutes up till 10 o'clock is rough. AJ, you say you can't hear? Can you hear us?
Hey, can you hear me?
Give us a
Yes.
Yeah.
There you
There
are.
we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Love it when a
Sorry
plan
about
comes
that.
together. You haven't played the "Turn It Back Off and On" song in a long time.
I
Sorry
know.
about that.
I know.
No,
I like,
no, no.
I like
no,
the
it's-
hat, AJ.
Thank you. I got to rep the brand. Trade Weather
Nice.
swag.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Yeah, we all need one of those. But WeatherBrains is excited about having Trade Weather as a sponsor of the show, as he does each week. AJ Grossbart from CX Futures joins us to talk about some of the more interesting weather markets coming up in the next 7 days. First, AJ, bring anybody up to speed who may be tuning in for the first time and hearing about what you guys do.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hope everyone's safe and doing all right at home. So for those that don't know, Trade Weather gives you the option to forecast daily weather events such as rainfall, snowfall, high and low temperature, as well as landfall during hurricane season across 86 cities in the United States. We have two markets I want to highlight today. The first market is rainfall in Portland, Maine on Thursday, April 2nd. Current forecasts range from 0.42 inches to 0.49 inches. And there's already been over $800 traded with a few days until measurement. When you trade rainfall and trade weather, you just need to forecast the correct range on the rainfall amount. In this case, if I were following the forecast and they were correct, I would trade the 0.25 inch strike level because you would be in the money if the rainfall amount was between 0.25 inches and 0.49 inches. The next market worth mentioning is the low 10 market in Memphis, Tennessee on Wednesday, April 1st. It's currently forecasted to be a bit below the seasonal average. And current forecasts range from 42 degrees to 43 degrees, with the most amount of trades currently taking place at the 45-degree strike level. There's been nearly $1,000 traded for this particular market. So how cold do you think it'll be in Memphis, Tennessee on April 1st? Trading for this market's available until 5 p.m. Eastern Tuesday, so get your trades in now. And lastly, to sign up, if you're new, head over to tradeweather.com and click on apply on the top right-hand corner. You'll get $10 at sign up. Once you place a trade, take the Trade Weather survey on the Trade Weather homepage, where we'll give you an additional $25 in trading credit. There'll be a new survey available for all WeatherBrain listeners who have not previously received the $25 credit. So take the survey, give us some feedback, and we appreciate you getting involved in the weather market.
So did you ask them, AJ, why in the world they would listen to the show? Was that one of the questions?
We got some good questions that relate to your audience, and hopefully we could share some valuable feedback with you over the coming weeks.
If it's good, we'll take it. If it's bad, we don't want to hear it. 741 shows. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But we really enjoy you being on the show. Appreciate your support and what you guys are doing for us, AJ. And we'll be excited about talking to you next week. Stick around if you want to chat to the end of the show here. We always love to have you
Definitely.
on. Or you're welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. James, back to you.
All right. So Aubrey, you got time to do a little email since I see that you're back in here.
I do have a little time. I do have a little time.
Wait a minute. That's the wrong one. What was
That's not my music?
Was that the Oklahoma Fight song? Are you playing that at 78 or what? What's
I kind of like it. Is that from
That's something
1902?
from like
No,
1802.
No, I want the
from the first American Depression.
All right, let's play the
Here's
right
High
one this
Fidelity.
time.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right, we've got a couple in tonight. The first one is from Steve Holmes in Joplin, Missouri. How the Weather Enterprise can protect the coronavirus response. AccuWeather is providing free forecasts and warnings to hospitals and COVID-19 facilities. And he also suggests that our friend Becky DePodwin might be able to speak on behalf of this for AccuWeather. And he also kind of puts in a quote, today's NWS outlook for eastern Iowa and western Illinois says strong winds developing Saturday afternoon and continuing through Sunday, impacting mobile tents set up for COVID-19. So that's an interesting idea.
Let me just say this. I'm really careful talking about this virus thing. It goes back to the old saying, tell them what you know. Don't tell them what you don't know. If I post information, I post it without comment. I do weather. I'm not a clinician. I'm not an expert in infectious diseases. So I'm trying to be real careful with this. And people ask about weather and how it impacts the virus. I refer them to a physician or an expert in that. I just don't know. So sometimes saying I don't know, it's the best thing you can do.
Agreed. All right, and then this next one came in from Marvin Johnson from Peoria, Illinois. Had sent us some great weather photos that he took while storm chasing this past Saturday night, and just showing us some trees down. And he also got a shot of the tornado-warned storm in Monmouth, and then just some of the destruction, and then a fire that was caused by lightning from a car dealership in East Peoria. So we appreciate those emails. If you want to send them to us, email at weatherbrains.com. If you have a guest suggestion, maybe a cool link, something cool you've seen, or just a question you'd like to ask us, go ahead and send it on over. Bill will get right back to you. Email at weatherbrains.com.
Yeah, they've been keeping me busy.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Let's talk weather. Let's just talk weather. Let's do that. People have heard enough about the virus. AJ, what's going on? What kind of weather you got this week? What's happening? Oh, AJ, you're muted. AJ's muted. There
Hey,
we go.
sorry.
Okay.
We're all
What
new
you
to the
got?
Zoom thing, AJ.
Yeah. Oh, what's the weather? Well, this is the weather roundup. You have to describe what's going to happen in weather this week where you live.
I'm seeing that New York's going to get some rain over the coming days. I'm not entirely sure if that's an accurate forecast amongst the experts here, but it's been a little bit rainy on and off. I know tomorrow there's supposed to be some rain in the forecast, so I'm going to be inside. I'm staying in. I'm in New York City, so I got to stay safe and stay out of harm's reach, but it looks like it's going to be forecasted for some rain.
What is it like to be in New York City right now, AJ? How scary is it? It looks pretty rough watching the television images.
Yeah, it's definitely a scary time. I am typically avoiding going out even unless I have to. I'm lucky I'm able to work remote. I have a whole desktop set up and my laptop, obviously, so I'm okay. But a lot of the issue is when I try and get like groceries delivered or anything along those lines, it's a couple of days in advance. You got to do it.
Wow.
So it's definitely a concern. Thankfully, I am located where there are groceries if I need to run out very quickly, but it's something I avoid unless it's absolute necessity.
Wow. Well, hope you stay safe. These
Thank
are
you.
scary times we're in here. All right, Aubrey. So we might do upper 30s where I am Wednesday morning. What about you? Got some chilly air later this
Yeah,
week?
definitely should be at least upper 30s, near 40 degrees. You know, coming off of a weekend where we hit 80 degrees both days, Saturday and Sunday. That's our first 80 degree of the season, about a week and a half before our average. So close, kind of, we're pretty close to right on par. But yes, it's going to be a bit of a cooler wedge over the next couple of days. You know, we're talking much cooler now in the 50s. So it's kind of nice to talk about cooler in the 50s.
Yeah. So Nate, the winter that never happened in Raleigh, huh? So it's,
And we were
you stick a fork in it, it's done.
Yeah, we were nearly 90 degrees all this weekend. I'm over it. I'm ready for fall. Bring it back.
I noticed
Summer was
Nate's wearing his
great.
flip-flops and a tank top for those that are not watching.
Yeah.
So he's
Summer-
clearly in the summer mode right now.
Yeah, summer was great. Let's move on to fall. We're supposed to not get out of the lower 60s tomorrow, stuck in the 50s on Wednesday, and that is fine by me. I'm over the heat already.
Woo, 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 woo. All right. And by the way, since Nate was mocking me, I decided to go to the beach back here. I changed my background just for Nate, so I don't look like Max Headroom anymore.
He was playing with the
so-
weather ball. Did you notice, James? He had his own version of the weather ball.
Yeah, there you go. So I see that. So Shay, and I'm sorry, I actually don't know where you're located. So
I'm
you are
in,
where in?
Yep, I was gonna say I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Not too far down from Nate. And yeah, we had 90s, low 90s here. We broke a couple of records over the weekend. I mean, we very summertime like pattern with Atlantic high pressure in the southwesterly sea breezes, and the sea surface temperatures crept up to the upper 60s. So now we're getting closer to that time where the marine layering stops happening. But we did have a weird fog bank come into the coast Friday, but I think we're gonna cool down a little bit this week and get back to spring. And that's really what I'm looking forward to. I mean, the mosquitoes and the gnats have come out. Our state bird is truly the mosquito here.
Yeah. So Shay, since you're in Charleston, then you're the guy that can answer the question. What's the hurricane season going to be like this year?
Well, we're waiting on CSU to come out with theirs and NOAA in May. Looking at the signal right now and gauging that with the INSO diagnostics, they're pretty firm on keeping this neutral through fall, but there are some signals pointing towards La Nina towards the peak season. So this could go either way. I'm thinking average to slightly above average is my ballpark. Just gauging that right now. If we start to slide, and I think the May, June, July through the October months, that 3 month, 4 month period is going to be crucial in whether or not we drop below 0.5 Celsius along 3.4, along region 3.4. That's what we gauge the El Nino and La Nina oscillations on, based on if it's lower or higher than a certain percentage or a certain degree. So that's going to be something worth watching closely. But yeah, the Atlantic Basin, it's already starting to warm up. We're seeing some warm pooling. Depends on if we get that stirred up enough earlier on. If not, it'd be like last year. Just we end up with deep warm water areas. So hopefully we'll get some relief from that with some anything that can churn up those waters and keep them churned up through the beginning of the summer.
Awesome. All right, Troy, what's happening down in deep in the heart of Texas?
Well, I love Shay and I love Aubrey and I love Nate, but we were only 79 or 80 on Saturday. So there you go. Middle of Texas.
Yeah.
You can have those 90s. We ended up a little disturbance that passed overhead today. We've had a weak front progressing from the west, had a quarter to a half inch of rain today. We're back to sunshine tomorrow into Wednesday. And then another storm system for late week into the weekend with, guidance would suggest maybe 1 to 2 inches of rain, which we need around here. But guidance has been poor of late, really since the beginning of the year. We'll have these rainfall amounts of 1 to 2 inches in the QPF. Model guidance, they'll be about 7 days out. It gets here and we get about a quarter to a half inch. So we'll watch it. Another rain headed this way by Friday and Saturday. Temperatures the next couple of days in the upper 70s with the sun, overnight lows in the 50s. I'll take it in. I'm like Nate. I'll take that any day of the week.
All right. So kind of show a preview of our weather segment here tonight. Somewhere in here, I've got the convective outlook for day 2, which should be next. There we go.
Working over there towards Shay.
So if people are watching, James, are you giving away the 10 o'clock here at 9:45?
That's a bonus if you watch WeatherBrains. You see, I mean, that's one reason to watch this show. So we've got a risk of thunderstorms that might be severe over the southern part of Alabama, Georgia, over toward Shay's territory in Charleston. So tomorrow should be a fairly active day. We'll get a good wet down. After that, we turn noticeably cooler. But Bill, let's have a little message from you, and then we'll come back and do our picks of the week.
Yeah, James, we need some rain here. Our 90-day deficit is down to 14.8 inches. I mean, surplus is down to 14.8 inches, so we could use some rain here. I tell you what,
getting dry.
Yeah, I tell you what. But we are excited. Aubrey, you're kind of a road trip person.
Yes, I am.
Road trips, and you're a meteorologist, but even for you, it's kind of hard to plan a trip around the weather, which route to take, what time to leave, all those sort of things. You could spend all day looking up the weather for each spot along your way. But Devin, Stormont, and Highway Weather have done the heavy lifting for you. Their app provides travel weather forecasts for road trips along every point of your route, adjusted for your time of arrival. All kind of cool free features for planning a trip. You can use the plan ahead button when selecting a route and look at forecasts all along the route. You can look at recommendations for the best time to start. You can adjust your departure time instantly. See updated forecasts by using the slider. You can even look at live outdoor cameras along the way. And where Ryan is, that would have been an interesting camera on Saturday for sure. And with that, you can get severe weather alerts along your route. They're flagged with red buttons if any of them are active. If you're going to stop and spend the night, which is kind of a dangerous proposition these days, you can actually add pause buttons along the way. But winds and precipitation levels inform you when travel's safe. You can also get it in multiple languages: English, Spanish, French, Italian, and even Portuguese. It's got a cool hands-free background feature to automatically alert you to bad upcoming weather when you're on your drive. And it's just a really cool app. And we appreciate Devin and his support of the show. You can arrive safely with Highway Weather. 60,000 users won't steer you wrong. Go to highwayweather.com WeatherBrains.io today to download it for iOS and Android. If you need the federal GEOINT app store, you can get it there for secure devices. But highway weather, arrive safely.
All right, picks of the week. My pick, it's the National Weather Service Memphis LSR series for the tornadoes on Saturday. They have finished their survey work, and you can read more about the tornadoes that came through Ryan's location up there in northeastern Arkansas. So let's go to Troy Kimmel for his pick of the week. Troy.
Jonesboro as well. You want a good cry for the day. This one, and actually this is a feel-good story when it gets down to it, but from CBS News, our friends up there, they did a story on a doctor in Jonesboro that working at the hospital there in Jonesboro, and he's been very heavily involved with the coronavirus activities and everything. And late last week, there was a great picture taken by his wife. He had gone home, but of course he couldn't go in to see his family. And he walked up the front door and held his hand up, and his small child walked up and just put the hand up against the glass against his dad's. And again, it's really a very emotional picture to see this. The tornado took out this doctor's home. He and his wife took out their home on Saturday. If you haven't seen this, and destroyed their home. Lissa, his wife, his child Zeke. Luckily, his wife and child were over at her parents' house. Were not in this house as the tornado destroyed it. Some friends, James and everybody, set up a GoFundMe account, and they set the limit. They wanted to raise, a few $1,000s. Here to tell you tonight, the GoFundMe account for Dr. Jared Burks and his family now up to $101,000.
Wow.
And
that's great.
And that makes you feel good. You really want to see this story. You see the picture of the doctor and his son late last week, just being able to say hello through the glass because of the coronavirus. But really good. It's a feel good story, and the fact that yes, their house is gone, but at least they're safe, and their neighbors have come out to support them.
Wow.
We need
all the picks
stories right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the links will be up on weatherbrains.com. All right, Aubrey, what you got?
So mine is the USGS store. If you follow them on Twitter, they do a free map Monday, and it's always really cool. And today's free map Monday is the Hellas Quadrangle of Mars. Last week they had Venus, so they're doing some planets right now, which is also really cool. But they'll do national parks and all sorts of cool stuff.
Venus and Mars are all right tonight. Whose album was that? Anybody remember? That would be Paul McCartney. And
What
that's
about
the
Pluto?
trivia that nobody cares about. All right, let's go to Nate for his pick of the week. Nate, what you got?
Pick of the week is an article by Brian Sullivan in Bloomberg, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, Bloomberg, talking about the impact of the lack of flights on computer model performance.
Yep.
All of those planes, we've talked about this in the past, are taking essentially many soundings on the way up and on the way down. And we're not getting as many of those right now. And most of the ones we're getting from cargo planes. We're going to get even fewer of them in the weeks to come. And it talks a little bit about the impact that's having on the quality of our computer model forecasts. According to the experts, people that know more than I do, satellite data is number one, aircraft data number two in importance. So losing that is going to have a quantifiable impact.
Cliff Mass said that here on the show. So, wow, that'll be an interesting read. All right, Shay, what you got for us this week? What's your pick of the week?
Yep, I usually do weather, but I'll tell you what, today I'm going to go with the U.S. Navy ship Comfort pulling into the New York harbor. Just a solemn reminder of how important social distancing is right now. So that was sort of impactful for me, just seeing that today, how, it's makes it a very real situation for many to see that.
Yeah, it's definitely real. All right, Bill Murray, go.
As always, my pick of the week is next week's show. Jen Nairmore.
Well,
Tornado Talk.
Whoa, so you have no pick of the week, is what you're saying?
No.
Hit it, James.
Dang it!
All right, go.
He gets the double fog.
He tried to sneak that one past you, James. He tried to sneak that one past
you.
He gets the one foghorn for not having a pick, and the double foghorn for trying to cheat.
Yeah.
But I am excited. Jen Narramore's going to join us next week. That's going to be a really fun show. And it's kind of ironic and just awful that on the 13th, we're going to be talking to two school administrators about canceling school for severe weather, Whit McGee and Troy Albert. And, it's just going to be, I'm sure we'll have a lot of other things to talk about that night too, but we will be talking about that when we ever get back to having school, James. I all the things you took for granted, now, the neighbor in your apartment that plays the trumpet, or the blinding sunrise that comes in every morning through the windows, now you're like, you took those for granted all those years and now you appreciate them. So
never know what you got till it's gone. But hey, we got to wrap this thing up because I got to go. I got to go do my thing, and I am in Studio A tonight. WeatherBrains is typically on the air every Monday night at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. And if you want to send us an email at weatherbrains.com. Our picks of the week on the website weatherbrains.com. But I got to go. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for watching and listening. Have a great week, and God bless.
Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great week, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Turn on the
Bye.
live view. I got to go to that one now. Y'all have a good night.
Okay.
Bye.